15,000 feet over the North Sea, February 1944. The starboard gun turret of a Lancaster bomber is shredded open. Hydraulic fluid mixes with blood on the metal floor. Wind screams through jagged holes punched by cannon fire. The gunner inside, Sergeant James Ward, has no oxygen mask, no pressurization, and no reason to believe he'll live another 10 minutes. But he has a roll of fabric tape, and 2 enemy fighters closing in. The air war over Europe is a mathematics of survival. For every 100 bombers that cross the Channel, 12 will not return. The men inside them know this. They carry the arithmetic in their chests, unspoken, heavy as flak jackets. Winter 1944. RAF Bomber Command is bleeding aircrew faster than training schools can replace them. The doctrine is brutal and simple. Fly straight, hold formation, trust the gunners to keep the fighters off. But doctrine assumes the guns will work. It assumes the turrets will rotate. It assumes hydraulic lines will hold pressure and oxygen will flow and plexiglass will stay intact. It does not account for what happens when all 3 fail at once. The Lancaster is a workhorse, 7 men, 4 engines, 63 feet of riveted aluminum carrying 7 tons of bombs into the heart of occupied Europe. It flies at night, low and heavy, through curtains of searchlight and flak. The rear gunner sits alone in a perspex bubble, exposed on 3 sides, his back to the fuselage. He wears electrically heated gloves and boots. The temperature at altitude is 40 below zero. If the heating fails, frostbite sets in within minutes. If the turret jams, he becomes a spectator to his own death. James Ward is 22 years old. He grew up in a mining town in Nottinghamshire, where his father worked underground and his mother mended clothes by lamplight. Ward joined the RAF in 1942, not out of patriotism, though he felt that too, but because the alternative was waiting for conscription. He trained as an air gunner at bases in Canada and Scotland. He learned to track a target through a gun sight while the aircraft bucked and yawed. He learned to strip a Browning machine gun blindfolded. He learned that most gunners died in the first 5 missions. This is his 18th. The target tonight is Brunswick, an industrial city in Lower Saxony, factories producing tank engines and artillery shells. The bomber stream, over 400 Lancasters, assembles over the English coast just after dusk. They climb in darkness, running lights off, navigating by dead reckoning and the faint glow of instrument panels. Inside each aircraft, the crew is silent. The intercom crackles occasionally with position checks. The gunners test-fire their weapons in short bursts. Tracer rounds arc away into the void. Ward settles into his turret as they cross the coast. He rotates the dome left and right, checking traverse. The quartet of Brownings responds smoothly. Hydraulics, hum. He flexes his fingers inside the heated gloves. Everything is functioning. Everything is cold and loud and routine, until it isn't. If this history matters to you, tap like and subscribe. James Ward was not supposed to be a gunner. He had wanted to be a pilot. During initial assessment, instructors noted his reflexes, his spatial sense, his calm under simulated pressure. But the RAF had a surplus of pilot candidates and a fatal shortage of gunners, so Ward was rerouted. He did not complain. Complaining changed nothing. His instructors remembered him as methodical. He did not rush through drills. He asked questions about mechanisms, why the feed chute angled a certain way, how the interrupter gear prevented firing through the propeller arc. He treated the machine gun as a puzzle to be understood, not just a tool to be operated. This habit, this curiosity, marked him as competent but unremarkable. The RAF did not reward curiosity. It rewarded obedience and consistency. Ward's crew came together in the autumn of 1943. They were strangers bound by function. Pilot, navigator, bomb aimer, wireless operator, flight engineer, mid-upper gunner, rear gunner. 7 men who would live or die based on collective competence. They trained together for 8 weeks, learning each other's voices on the intercom, each other's rhythms under stress. The pilot was a farm boy from Yorkshire. The navigator had studied mathematics at Cambridge. The bomb aimer was a former shop clerk. They flew practice runs over the Scottish Highlands, simulating night bombing in weather that tried to kill them even without enemy intervention. Ward's role was singular: defend the rear. The Lancaster's tail was its most vulnerable point. German night fighters, Messerschmitt Bf-110s and Junkers Ju-88s, attacked from below and behind, exploiting the blind spot under the fuselage. A good rear gunner could spot the silhouette, call evasive action, and put enough rounds into the fighter's nose to break off the attack. A poor gunner never saw what hit him. Ward was good, not exceptional, not an ace, but steady. He completed his first 5 missions without incident, then 10. The odds began to tilt in his favor. Survival became statistically plausible. He allowed himself to think past the war. Maybe a job in engineering, maybe a small house near his parents, maybe a future that was not measured in sorties. But statistical plausibility is not certainty. And February 1944 brings a surge in Luftwaffe night fighter activity. New tactics, upward-firing cannons mounted behind the cockpit, schräge Musik, they call it, jazz music. The fighters slide beneath the bomber, invisible to the gunners, and fire up into the fuel tanks. The Lancaster erupts. No warning, no chance. Ward knows this. Every gunner knows this. It is the unspoken terror that sits behind every mission briefing. The 19th of February, 1944. The bomber stream is 2 hours into the mission. They are over the Dutch coast, approaching German airspace, when the first fighter makes contact. It comes from below, just as doctrine predicts. The mid-upper gunner spots it first, a shadow rising through the darkness, and calls evasive action. The pilot banks hard left. The Lancaster shudders. Bomb load shifts. The gunners open fire. Ward tracks the Bf-110 through his turret. The enemy fighter is sleek, twin-engine, faster than the bomber by 100 miles per hour. It climbs, angles for position, then breaks off as tracers converge near its wing. The intercom is terse. Pilot confirms course correction. Navigator updates position. Wireless operator monitors for recall signals. Everyone is doing their job. Then the second fighter arrives. It comes fast, from 6 o'clock high, cannon fire walking up the fuselage. The sound is catastrophic, metal tearing, hydraulic lines rupturing, the shriek of wind through sudden openings. Ward's turret takes a direct hit. A 20mm shell punches through the perspex dome, missing his head by inches. The dome shatters. Fragments spray inward. His oxygen line is severed. His intercom goes dead. The hydraulic system loses pressure. The turret stops rotating. He is locked in place, facing rearward, unable to traverse the guns. The wind at 15,000 feet is a physical force. It strips the breath from his lungs. The temperature is -40. His face is instantly numb. He can feel frostbite starting in his cheeks, his nose, his ears, and the fighter is coming back. Ward tries the manual traverse. The crank is stiff, almost immovable without hydraulic assist. He forces it, using both hands, dragging the turret a few degrees at a time. His gloves are thick. His fingers are already losing sensation. The gun sight is gone, blown away with the perspex. He is aiming by instinct and geometry. The Bf-110 lines up for another pass. Ward can see the muzzle flashes from its nose cannons. He estimates lead, elevation, deflection. He presses the trigger. The Brownings hammer. Spent casings pile at his feet. Tracer rounds arc into the night. The fighter peels away. Ward does not know if he scored hits. He knows only that it is not pressing the attack. Not yet. But his turret is destroyed. The dome is gone. His oxygen is gone. The hydraulics are gone. And they are still an hour from the target. 2 hours from home. He reaches for the intercom to report status. The wire dangles, useless. He is alone. Ward assesses the damage with the methodical calm drilled into him by training. Panic is a luxury. Panic uses oxygen the body no longer has. He inventories what remains. 4 machine guns, still functional. Manual traverse, sluggish but operational. Ammunition belts, 3/4 full. And in the corner of the turret, secured in a toolbox, a roll of fabric tape. The tape is standard issue. Heavy canvas backing, rubberized adhesive, used for temporary repairs to fabric control surfaces, sealing minor leaks, reinforcing stressed points. It is not designed for structural work. It is certainly not designed to seal a shattered gun turret at altitude. Ward begins anyway. He tears off strips with his teeth. His gloves are too thick for fine manipulation. He presses the tape over the largest holes in the Perspex frame, overlapping edges, smoothing it down despite the wind resistance. The tape holds, barely. It reduces the airflow just enough to make breathing possible. Not comfortable, not safe, but possible. He moves to the hydraulic lines. They are torn open, leaking fluid across the turret floor. He cannot repair them, but he can stop the leak from spreading. He wraps tape around the ruptures, binding them closed. The hydraulics remain dead. There is no pressure left to restore, but at least the fluid stops spraying into his face. Each action takes minutes. His hands are clumsy. The cold is numbing his thoughts. He knows that at this altitude, without oxygen, he has perhaps 15 minutes before hypoxia renders him unconscious. He has already used 10, and then the fighter returns. It comes from below, angling upward, confident that the Lancaster's rear turret is neutralized. Ward sees it through the gaps in his makeshift tape patchwork. He cranks the manual traverse. The turret inches around. The fighter closes. Ward centers the gun sight, what remains of it, and fires. The Brownings erupt. 4 streams of 50 caliber rounds converge on the fighter's nose. Ward does not aim for the cockpit. He aims for the engine nacelle, the wing root, the fuel lines. He fires in controlled bursts, walking the tracers across the target. The Bf-110 shudders. Smoke trails from its port engine. It breaks left, abandoning the attack, descending into the darkness. Ward lowers his guns. His breath comes in shallow gasps. The tape around the turret edges flutters but holds. He does not know if the fighter is destroyed or merely damaged. He knows only that it is gone. For now. The bomber stream reaches Brunswick 30 minutes later. The city below is ablaze. Pathfinders have marked the target with incendiaries. The main force drops its payload in waves, 1,000-pound high-explosive bombs, clusters of incendiaries, delayed action mines. The sky is bright with flak. The ground erupts in geometric patterns of fire. Ward's Lancaster releases its load and turns for home. The pilot pushes the throttles forward. Speed is survival. The faster they clear enemy airspace, the fewer fighters they will face. But speed increases the wind pressure on Ward's turret. The tape begins to peel. He presses it back down with his palm. The adhesive is freezing, losing grip. He applies more strips, layering them over the weakening sections. His oxygen deprivation is severe now. His vision tunnels. His thoughts fragment. He focuses on simple tasks. Watch the sky, rotate the turret, keep the guns ready. And then, impossibly, a third fighter appears. This one is a Junkers Ju 88, faster than the Bf-110, more heavily armed. It comes from the starboard side, crossing behind the bomber, lining up for a deflection shot. Ward cranks the traverse. His arms are lead. The turret swings with agonizing slowness. The Ju-88 opens fire. Cannon rounds streak past the tail. One clips the vertical stabilizer. Another punches through the fuselage behind Ward's turret. The Lancaster yaws. The pilot corrects. Ward keeps cranking. The fighter slides into his field of fire. He does not wait for a perfect solution. He presses the trigger and holds it down. The Brownings roar. Tracers lash across the night. The Ju-88 is silhouetted against the fires below. Ward walks his fire across its fuselage, from tail to nose, stitching a line of impacts along the canopy. The fighter's nose drops. It rolls inverted. Flames bloom from its cockpit. It spirals downward, out of control, trailing smoke and debris. Ward releases the trigger. His guns are empty. The barrels glow red in the darkness. He slumps back against the turret wall. The tape holds, barely. The wind howls through the gaps. His face is frostbitten. His lungs burn. But the sky behind the Lancaster is empty. No more fighters come. The Lancaster crosses the North Sea at dawn. The crew is silent. The intercom remains dead in Ward's turret. He does not know if the others are alive. He watches the sun rise over the water, a pale disk in a gray sky. His hands are black with frostbite. His tape patchwork is in tatters, but the turret held. They land at their base in Lincolnshire just after 7 in the morning. Ground crew swarm the aircraft. They count the holes, over 40 cannon strikes, dozens of bullet impacts. They stare at the rear turret, at the shattered perspex, the improvised tape seals, the frozen blood on the floor. Ward is extracted from the turret. He cannot walk. His legs have been locked in position for over 6 hours. Medical personnel carry him to the infirmary. His frostbite is severe but not fatal. His lungs will recover. His hearing, damaged by hours of unprotected exposure to gunfire and wind, will not. The intelligence officer interviews him that afternoon. Ward describes the engagements. The officer records 2 confirmed kills, one Bf-110, one Ju-88. Both credited to Ward. He is the only gunner in the squadron to have scored kills from a turret with no perspex, no oxygen, and no hydraulics. His pilot recommends him for a decoration. The squadron commander endorses it. 6 weeks later, Ward receives the Distinguished Flying Medal. The citation notes his courage, his resourcefulness, and his refusal to abandon his post despite catastrophic damage. But the real story spreads differently. It moves through the gunner community, whispered in briefing rooms and dispersal huts. The story of the rear gunner who patched his turret with tape and kept fighting. It becomes a legend, not because it is extraordinary, though it is, but because it is believable, because every gunner knows that survival is a matter of inches and improvisation, because they all carry a roll of fabric tape in their kit now. Ward flies 16 more missions. He survives the war. He never speaks publicly about the night over Brunswick. When asked, he shrugs. He says he did what needed doing. He says the tape held. He says he was lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. James Ward returned to Nottinghamshire in 1945. He worked as a mechanic, married a schoolteacher, raised 3 children. He attended squadron reunions infrequently. He did not wear his medal. When his grandchildren asked about the war, he told them about the friends he lost, not the fights he won. He died in 1989, aged 67. His obituary in the local paper ran 4 paragraphs. It mentioned his service. It did not mention the tape. But the lesson endures, not in monuments or museums, but in the thousands of small decisions made by ordinary people under impossible conditions. The instinct to act when systems fail. The refusal to accept that damage equals defeat. The knowledge that survival is often a matter of what you do with what you have left. The fabric tape Ward used is still standard issue in survival kits. It is called 100-mile-an-hour tape now, or speed tape, used to patch aircraft skin in the field. Mechanics know its limits. They know it is not a permanent fix. But they also know that permanence is a peacetime luxury. In war, temporary is enough. Temporary can bring you home. Ward understood that. He understood that the war was not won by perfection, but by persistence, by the gunner who keeps firing when the turret is destroyed, by the pilot who flies on 3 engines, by the navigator who plots a course with a broken compass, by the cumulative weight of 1,000 improvised solutions, each one buying another mile, another minute, another chance. 15,000 feet over the North Sea, a young man faced a choice. He could have bailed out. He could have abandoned the turret. He could have let the fighters through. Instead, he reached for a roll of tape. And in that small, unremarkable act, he proved that genius is not the absence of fear, but the presence of will. That heroism is not refusing to break, but continuing to function after you do. The tape held, the guns fired, the bomber came home. That is enough.